Bitcoin crash this week, what to do now? So we are going to discuss about that. What are the reflex to have, the things to avoid, The goal here is for me to share my experience, of having, I don't know how many crash in crypto, right, over the past 6-7 years. And so let's start, So as always, what you want to do is buy the FUD, sell the FOMO, and it's not that easy to do, right? That's for sure, that's not easy, but still, that's the thing you want to be focused on. You want to accumulate when fear is below 20. Most of the time when fear is below 20, the macro is not optimal, so you have some time, and you want to start selling when the FUD, the FOMO is in, above 80. So that's the thing. Second thing is like most indicators, and once again, I'm not using them as like the solutions or like whatsoever, but these are like small models that are interesting. And if we look at them, for example, Mayer multiple, it's interesting, right? And if you look at all those indicators, they start to become like really interesting for Bitcoin, saying like we are in a zone where basically top guys will start buying back, The question is like how bad is the macro and how much liquidity is in the market or can get into the market, to make sure like those people buy. But I would say always the same thing, from a technical standpoint, it's interesting. So sentimental and wise, interesting. Technical, interesting. Third thing is macro. Macro, it's not optimal. That's the thing, and that's why you have no rush, no need to rush because the macro is not good. When we have the free line, this is where it's interesting, to do a value play on the market, try to buy like kind of like the FUD and like longer term, investment, I would say. So also in trenches, we discussed a lot about short selling. I will go more in depth for the private members, but if we look at few advice I'm giving here today. So it's the quants giving some advice, of course, not financial advice, right? First thing is no leverage. I think I'm saying it over and over again, stop leverage, stop buying the dip, using leverage and so on. It makes no sense. This kind of trading works in specific market conditions. We are not in those market conditions. Second thing is like, as I mentioned, macro is not good. So that's why no need to rush, You can chill a bit, or go slower than you would have expected in terms of investing. Third thing is priority for BTC, ETH, Solana. I see too many retails focusing on like other coins, focused on that these days, more important. If you have some icons, keep them, right? Why? Because most likely when the market will bounce, BTC will overperform. And also the interesting thing is like we see it this week of Bitcoin going down quite significantly, but some altcoin didn't went down that much, For example, it's like nobody is actually up, I think, if we look over the week, right? Because those icons have like underperformed so much that at some point there is no more sellers, and yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So Bitcoin will outperform first, so that's why you want perhaps to have exposure to Bitcoin, and it's a good time, I would think many people were like a bit left behind on Bitcoin, saying like, oh, I don't have Bitcoin and so on. That's an interesting time. So patience again, limit orders, they can be very far out, it's not a big deal, I have some limit orders that are still on some icons like 30-40% lower than the current price. A good example I think would be BNB, where I'm not buying BNB above 580, 580, So has to go down like 25%. This is just an example, right? Another one is really to understand in your portfolio when it is the time to accumulate and when it is the time to distribute, sell. When it's the time to accumulate, it's fairly simple. You just want to reduce your spendings, focus more in investing every month, and really being in the mindset of like you buy an asset that is most likely discounted and you have to make some sacrifice, So making those sacrifice today will pay off tomorrow, I think that's the thing we missed in crypto right now. But I remember in the last bear market, when the market was really, really down, the crypto friends, were telling like, oh, I'm not going out because I'm saving, because what I'm buying these days most likely will go up. And if it go up the way it should go up, then I will be able to, like, instead of going to a 4-star hotel, I would go to a 5-star, or instead of like, this kind of like mindset. So, I'm giving some examples, for fun, but that's kind of like the mindset, it's like, okay, time to accumulate, focus on accumulating, it will pay off. At some point you need to be a bit stubborn, The truth is like, if you really want to make it big, you have to be in the between of like being smart, stubborn, It's like being stubborn, having a conviction, doubling down on them. But at some point, like knowing when to like optimize what to do, And of course, always entering multiple trenches. For selling, you can sell in one clip. I think a good example is like if I have done a video when I was selling all my E4600. I was almost sold in one clip, you know. For buying, it's always harder to time. It's easier to time the top than timing the bottom. So timing the bottom is a bit harder, so that's why you have to enter a bit more in multiple times. So yeah, that was it. That was like a small recap for like about the market and what it is, some few advice of what I recommend. If you have some advice that I forgot, feel free to comment. It would be interesting to know, you know, to share, you know, having you sharing your experience. I'm just sharing, you know, a bit of my experience on the financial markets, of like all the FUD and FOMO, and I do understand that, you know, buying the FUD is hard, being contrarian is hard, but for investors, for retail, it's the easiest way to make money. I think the two things is like value investing, you know, being contrarian, and the second thing is momentum. It's like an asset is performing, you keep accumulating it, and you have a very long-term view on that. So yeah, that was it, that was the quant. Hope it's helping you. Don't capitulate, don't panic, and cheers.